the revelation in the Times that 300 classified documents were found at Mar-a-Lago.
So yesterday was a big news day because you had the New York Times reporting. You also had John Solomon issuing a letter from the archives in May that was also quite damning. And you had former President Trump's filing for a special master. So there was a lot of news. None of it was good for the president. The New York Times reporting I found most interesting because of one particular sentence, which is that several sources said that when the archives were trying to get the documents back, that it was the former president, Donald Trump, who personally reviewed the boxes in deciding what to return. And that means he also decided what not to return. And we know from the archives, not just from the New York Times, that in those 15 boxes were substantial number of classified documents at the highest level. That is TSSCI, which is compartmented programs, special access programs. They constituted, just within the 15 boxes, 700 pages of classified documents. So that is incredibly damning. If you're a prosecutor, you really look for evidence of what the former president did personally. And if the DOJ either knows about or is soon to interview those people who were sources for the New York Times, they're going to have a substantial criminal case. So,
Tracy, the timeline goes something like, you've got the National Archives saying, hey, guys, Trump officials, Trump aides, you forgot to leave us under the Presidential Records Act, all the documents from the White House. Where are they? Finally, in January, some of them are turned over, 150 or so, according to the Times. And as they start to go through these documents, they say, my God, a lot of this is classified information, so they refer it to the Justice Department. As a former FBI and CIA agent, when you hear there are 300 classified documents stashed away at a country club in South Florida, what do you hear?
I think the bottom line is something that really hasn't been talked about a lot is when classified information is mishandled on that scale, that large of a scale, people die. We forget about our sources and methods and assets and military and all of the things that those classifications really work to protect. And when I'm hearing that there's 300 documents and things like Andrew was mentioning that Trump went through personally and chose not to give back, we're really forgetting that there's lives behind this information.
Andrew, just to pick up on a conversation we were having earlier in the program with Chuck Rosenberg, if the Justice Department can't prove that Donald Trump was intending to do something nefarious for his own benefit with these classified documents, could he still nonetheless be in some kind of legal jeopardy? And if so, what?
The question is, how many days has it been since Trump's raid and she still hasn't learned the fact that Trump is in trouble for the crime he committed? I mean, how many times they're going to ask, could Trump be in trouble, even if he declassified everything? She's going to continue to ask this question, and the media will continue to ask these questions because the media needs to go as soft on Republicans as they can. If she hasn't asked this question of someone before, clearly days after the raid, someone that is on national television should most definitely have had a talk with a lawyer. The fact that she plays stupid is only for Republicans' benefit.
Yeah, so the answer to that is legally it's irrelevant that he was not or found or proved to actually have disseminated the documents to a third party. That is, the government doesn't have to wait until there's even more harm to our national security that these documents are given to foreign adversaries, for instance. All of the criminal statutes that were cited by the government in the search warrant, and by the way, there are more, and the government is not limited to just relying on those statutes, don't require that the government prove that there was actual dissemination. Although I do think in this case they would be able to, because dissemination could be to any third party. That can include counsel, the people transporting the boxes. All of these people, by the way, we know did not have authority, were not cleared to get classified documents. And that we know from the archives in their back and forth with the Trump counsel. They pointedly say, we're happy to share with you and have you review unclassified documents because you don't have clearance to see anything else. So I don't think that's any sort of speed bump for the government in deciding whether to bring a criminal case.
Nothing. Trump is guilty. The only reason why the government hasn't already arrested him is because Trump is rich and he was powerful. This is how the justice system works. There is this unique Justice Department policy that before they bring charges, they need to decide that they can actually win the case, which makes somewhat sense. But when you stop and you think about it, who is most likely to be convicted when the Justice Department comes after them? The poor, not the rich. You see, the Justice Department pretends it doesn't benefit the celebrities and the rich and the politicians, but it benefits those that can put up a fight, which is the celebrities, politicians, and the rich. So technically, they're not doing it, but their policy in the end does. It's like when you make a law saying no one can go around topless, and you only arrest the women for doing it. It's a bigoted policy. It attacks the poor, and the Justice Department keeps doing it. If any charges were brought against Trump, they're almost guaranteed a conviction because he has openly admitted to dozens of crimes.
Mike, we've had 2 weeks now of excuses and explanations for why these documents ended up at Mar-a-Lago, but the bottom line is there is no good or legal explanation for snatching 300 classified documents and putting them in your basement.
No, and there's especially, it's even more dangerous when you consider the fact that the former president has apparently on the record said, well, those documents are mine. They belong to me, not the United States government, not to the archives. And Tracy, in just reading about the voluminous numbers of documents that have been taken, some so highly classified, according to the reporting, that they can only be read in a SCIF, in a private, secure setting. My question to you is the release of these documents, or even talking about these documents at dinner at Mar-a-Lago or wherever, with whom, the idea of methods of research, of how the information and the intelligence got into these documents, wouldn't the exposure of this put so many potential informants, agents worldwide at supreme risk of losing their lives?
You are absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head there. And, I worked in a SCIF at the CIA and I worked in a SCIF at the FBI because I worked counterintelligence there. And perhaps this will help sharing a little bit of an anecdote, sort of the ripple effect that this creates. Back when I was at the agency, I worked counterterrorism. However, a chart that we had created was misused by Colin Powell on sort of the floor of the UN to justify the war. And portions of the chart we made were not properly redacted and were mishandled. As a result, we lost a lot of assets that we had. And the reality is we were not able to then track other terrorists that we were following through those assets. And they went ahead and then blew up a train in Spain. So really, that's the ripple effect that this has when our sources and our methods and this type of information is mishandled.
Mishandling? mishandled? This would be a hair on fire story if the roles were reversed. If a Democrat stole 300 classified documents from the federal government, you bet that Republicans would be out in rage. How dare these traitors steal national defense documents, putting our soldiers at risk? Because that is what is actually going on. They put our soldiers and every American at risk because, well, Trump wanted to sell them, make money, trade for favors like a golf tournament from foreign powers. Why aren't they a little bit more upset about that? Why aren't they doing anything like the 18-month-long investigations that they had into Hillary Clinton's emails that came up with 0 crimes? There is a massive double standard in the media, and every day they prove it's still there.
Andrew, my question is, what about the unclassified documents? There are unclassified documents in there too. Don't those also belong to you and me and the American people, not to Donald Trump? And is that not as a crime, maybe not as much of a crime as having the compartmented information, but isn't that theft? Didn't he steal these documents from us?
Absolutely. The crime the federal crime is 18 USC 641 for all of the nerds out there who want to look it up. That governs if you steal government property. So that would comply. That would require compliance by any former government official, including the former president, and it applies to classified or unclassified documents. One of the things that the National Archives made clear is these are not your documents. And I think that the motion that the former president made yesterday, where he asked for a special master, has a fatal flaw in it, because one of the things that he doesn't address is nothing needs to be sifted because none of the documents are actually the former president's. These all belong, whether classified or not classified, to the National Archives. We all know, Tracy and I, when we left government, you know what we took with us? Nothing. Because the documents that we were working on were not ours. They belong to the public. And especially if you're the former president, these are of historical importance. And that's why there is a congressional statute that requires that these be transferred to the archives.
And Andrew, just to put a fine point on that, it's a question a lot of people have asking. Does the classification matter? If the documents were taken, isn't that a crime already, regardless of what level of classification they fall under?
Yeah, absolutely. So the statutes don't require it. As we were just talking about, there's a crime of just taking government property. And it also isn't even a question for the discretionary decision that has to be made within the department about, isn't it less culpable if the president were found factually, that's a big if, to have declassified some of these documents, because those documents were just as important to our national security, as Tracy pointed out, and carried all of the risks that Tracy well articulated. Whether the former president labeled them classified or not classified, they all had that same sensitivity, and they all put our national security as Americans at risk.
And sat there for more than a year before they were turned over in January.
The threat is still there. We don't know who was searching through these documents, or if any of the myriad of people that Trump hired to move them around stole any. That's the thing. Trump was not careful with these classified documents. These documents that were only supposed to be looked at in a skiff. That means they went into a skiff, removed documents that they weren't supposed to, probably copied them, and they kept a copy for themselves. Now, if you want to talk about treason and how dangerous people are with the secrets of the federal government, if Republicans ever wanted to be taken seriously on national secrets again, they would call for the prosecution of Trump. But the reason why they don't is because they never cared about secrets. They're political hacks from the tippy top of the Republican Party, all the way down to the whack jobs of Marjorie Taylor Greene and all those bigots running for office right now. That's even worse than that we have in the office. Every generation of Republicans will devolve even further because those that help build this party where they can elect people that stupid, they're not willing to give up their power. So even though those with massive seniority are barely holding on to their seats as these whack jobs come out of the woodwork to run against them, they're not going to do the right thing, because that has never been the Republican Party. So if you like those videos, please help. The YouTube algorithm is horribly biased against, progressives. And the Republicans have massive amounts of money just to buy it off. So every time you like, every time you put a comment down below, helps us out. So like, subscribe, and if you really want to help the environment, down below is a link to a GoFundMe page where it has a brand new power generation that is 0% carbon emission and one of the cheapest productions of electricity the world has ever had. So go down, help us out.